We are recording. Okay, the WSESD school board meeting is called to order at 6:01 this evening. As you look over the agenda, are there any changes that you would like to see to it at this point? Thank you very much. And just to let you know that in the future we will be there will be a motion to approve the consent agenda, which is warrants, payroll, as well as minutes. We're going to do it with one motion. So, before we come to that, in fact, right now, if there is anything in the consent agenda that needs to be pulled for discussion, that needs to be announced now so that we can take it out, put it to the side. Great, thank you very much. I'd like to begin this evening's meeting with a couple of remarks coming from my rookie perspective. So I have 5 comments to make. Number 1, regarding public comment on non-agenda items. I will not call on board members or administration at this time. This is a section of the agenda reserved only for community members. As chair, I will respect the voices of the public. Board members and administrators have ample opportunities to share comments during the course of the meeting or to write an email subsequently. Please note that I will vary the placement of public comment in order to accommodate a variety of lifestyles. For some community members, 6 o'clock is great. For others, 7 o'clock is not. So varying it hopefully will allow for a greater range of voices. Number 2, when we are clustered together in a venue, we can read expressions of approval or disapproval. It is far more difficult to see body language over Zoom. Even as we are in person, consider ways of indicating approval, perhaps when called upon to say simply, I agree. When we speak in support of a comment or motion, are we truly adding to the discussion? Some boards establish a norm that a speaker adds new information to the issue, that the speaker does not restate what has already been stated. So let's find a way to indicate approval without restating what's already been said. Point number 3, a reminder for all of us to speak to the issue with civil, courteous speech. Emotionally tinged comments are frequently inappropriate and hamper movement forward because now we are distracted from the topic. Although an issue or motion or even a comment may be upsetting, strive to keep the conversation focused. Keep emotions in control. Speak to the issue. Assume the best of intentions. We all have lessons to learn in terms of boardroom decorum, civil, courteous speech. Point number 4, regarding follow-up questions. There is a tendency to have a series of follow-up questions. Some should be asked in the moment, some can wait. Please consider holding additional comments or questions until others have had a chance to speak. And point number 5, I have asked Sean Murphy to keep track of how long we speak. 2 minutes, with a gentle warning at 1.5 minutes. Those are my initial comments to this meeting.
Madam Chair.
I know he did. I'm really not interested in conversation right now about this. So, Tim?
Just your point number 2, I'd like to remind fellow board members that when one fellow board member makes a point, it's perfectly appropriate and responsible to chime in and say, I agree with that. So everybody knows if that comment is just merely the opinion of one person or several other board members.
So as I said, simply say, I agree, raise your hand, please, I will call on you, I agree. We move on quickly, that would be great, okay?
Madam Chair, have
Yes.
we dispensed with the hybrid meeting statement?
No, we have not, thank you very much. The hybrid meeting statement, no. The meeting of the WSESD has come to order. This meeting is a hybrid meeting, which means that some or all of the public body is meeting remotely and some are meeting physically in a previously noticed location, where the public may attend to observe, listen, and participate contemporaneously. Please note that while we will strive to provide means for those attending remotely to participate in the public comment period, there may be technical difficulties or reasons that otherwise prevent or interrupt remote public participation. Therefore, if you lose the connection, please reach out to someone in the group via email, via text, and we will do our very best to reconnect you. If it doesn't work, the meeting continues. Thank you. I think we are up to student matters. 10 minutes to hear student voices.
I don't have much.
That's okay, that's okay. It's not an obligation, it's an opportunity, that's all. So I'm looking to see if there are any hands in the space, and I don't see any. So I will open it again to student voices. Okay, so again, we're moving on with this meeting. If any board member feels that an item on the consent agenda warrants discussion, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be set aside for discussion. In this way, the consent agenda will be approved in one motion. Okay, thank you. And as we continue, I just want to remind everyone, our next meeting is May 28th, and I believe that meeting will be at Putney Central School. So don't get lost. Go to Putney Central. We are up to board matters, and it is 6:10. We are going to start with continuing our discussion, end of year appreciation. Ruby, would you like to take this over?
I would love to. I'm just pulling up some notes. So if you recall from the last meeting, Brian and I and Eva, although she stepped away a little bit, gave us some thoughts and stepped away. We were charged with kind of trying to give forward a proposal around what do we do with appreciation towards our staff. We did put out a request for information through Mark to the principals, and we did get some feedback and some thoughts in the where that pushed us, or where that where there was clarity was that we should be doing something. Let's do the something. And given the end of the year and the timing, Brian and I are proposing that we approve an expenditure of approximately almost $10 per staff person, up to $10 per staff person. And we would engage with local vendors to do something similar to what we did last year, platters in some capacity. What we would need is 3 to 4 board members who would step up to do the legwork, both the legwork of planning and engaging those vendors, and then also physically taking those platters to schools. And then we also have Brian did a great job drafting a letter of appreciation, which we did last year also, and was sent out publicly via the papers and the media and social media, as well as we would print it and distribute it along with the platters. So that's where we're thinking. And so because we don't want to spend a lot of time with that, I'd like to make a motion that the WSCSD board approve expenditures of up to $7,500 towards staff appreciation in the district.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Okay, thank you very much. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand and saying aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Please raise your hand and signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much, Ruby. We can proceed with that.
Yes.
Now, you
Are
are
there any-
asking for board members to step forward at this point to indicate they're ready to pack their cars and deliver. So, board members, please.
And I'm happy to help coordinate that effort but I can't do it all alone. So I
Why
do-
not?
I know, it's
I know, I mean, really.
Travis.
Okay, so I will step forward. So Ruby, I presume you're one.
Yes.
Okay, Matt?
Which day are we planning on doing delivery? Do we have that determined yet?
To be determined,
To be
and
determined.
your input, if you want to participate, could sway that.
If I have some flexibility on the day, I'd be happy to schlep some goodies.
Okay, I'm putting Matt down. And Colleen, thank you very much, Colleen. Okay. And Brian, is that a yes from you?
Yes, it is. I can help deliver.
Okay, thank you very much. All right.
And it's ready on the day.
Okay. And Kim, wow.
Yeah.
All right, so Ruby,
Yeah.
Deb, Matt, Colleen, Brian, and Kim.
That's great.
Sounds pretty good. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
Brian has a hand up, I'm not sure if it was from.
I'm sorry, who does?
Brian.
Brian, your hand is still up. Did you want to say something?
No.
Your hand is down. Okay.
No, thank you. I'm fine.
Okay, thank you. We're moving on to an update on the recent board retreat that we had on May 3rd, 2024. We met at Oak Grove Library, which was lovely. Thank you very much, Oak Grove. And Kim is going to give us a brief overview on that retreat.
We had a great night. We had Christina Naylor again as our facilitator, and she did a fabulous job again as she did the previous time. We started the night out. We had a nice warm-up activity of Kiss, Marry, Kill. And unfortunately we were missing Eva, everybody else, but we missed Eva and we missed having her there that night. But just things with the board and what we do during our meetings. So it was a quick, easy way to, for everybody to say, oh, we don't like how long they go sometimes. Yes, we like other aspects of it. So it was a great way to have it on the board and just recognize it very quickly. We talked about the board calendar and wanting to work hand in hand with admin just to set that calendar up for next year. We had a fun online meeting quiz that we did, and it was basically open meeting law. And sorry, Tim and Matt, we got to steal points from people from other teams. It was rather fun.
And it was difficult.
It was
The questions
difficult.
were difficult.
Yes, they were very difficult, but they, you're like, oh, yeah. And if you misread something, if you read something too quickly, which I do, you miss stuff. So, and then Christina did a great job. She pulled reporting formats and agendas from other school boards and other districts throughout the state. So we were able to look at that and see what we thought would work well for our board and for our district, compared to what other boards are doing throughout the state. So, gave us a great overview of, how we can restructure that. And then at the end of the meeting, in open meeting, we had just discussion regarding structuring the agenda. And as you can see, we've redone a bunch of that already.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone want to add to what Kim said? Okay, thank you very much. I also have on the agenda compensation for Christina Naylor, and she has asked for no more than $500 this time around, and again, for that to be a donation to the Green Mountain Camp for Girls. So can I have a motion to allocate that amount of money, please?
So moved.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Second.
Thank you, and any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please signify by raising your hand and saying no. Any abstentions? Thank you very much. Okay. Any update on board subcommittees?
It's not really much of an update, but the Programmatic and Performance Equity Committee is actively trying to assemble. I'm guessing we will get it together in June. But any community member who's interested, we'll try to keep the board informed, and also it will be posted and warned on the website.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Sean?
The Finance Committee will be meeting on Monday, June 3rd, I think, or actually, yeah, June 3rd at 1 o'clock. And the location will be the central office. So that's a bit of a change from what we have done previously. And that's contingent on to make sure that everybody can do that.
Great, thank you. Flexibility is great for all of us. Matt?
Sorry, Sean, could you just say that time again for me one more time?
Yeah, it'll be 1 o'clock on June 3rd.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else for board subcommittees? Moving on, leadership councils. Any updates from any leadership councils? Ruby?
The BUHS Leadership Council had a very successful staff appreciation breakfast that was sweet. I was able to attend it, and it was wonderful to see the staff. They seemed very surprised and happy. This was a breakfast put on by the Guilford Country Store. We had coffee donated by Mocha Joe's, and some plates that were donated by Z-Pots, and who is a parent. There's a parent who is part of Z-Pots, and so it was really wonderful and special. And I think it was one of the first times there was that particular leadership council participated and did that thing, and so I think it elevated the people's understanding of what that leadership council does. So I think that was great.
That's great, thank you.
Can I add to that?
Yes, Hannah.
There's multiple staff members that came up to me and said in their 25, 30 years in the building that they had never experienced anything like that from parents. And they were so grateful for the opportunity to just see them in the building and feel the love and warmth coming from families. And that leadership council did a job like nothing I've ever seen. I mean, they did parent shout outs that were taped with this great boards that were hanging in the staff room, individual notes in boxes from people. It was just, it was incredible.
Yeah, and it was a lot of work. There was a core team of people. Stephanie Bonin led; she's the chair. But there were quite a few others, and there was a lot of participation and outreach to parents. And at the high school level, there isn't a PTO, and so this really did fill a need, I think. that was there. So I think that's that's a success story as far as the Leadership Council at VHS.
Yeah, and I think Stephanie got like $1,300 in donations from families to support the breakfast being offered for last Friday morning.
Right.
So it was fully funded by families.
Great. Anyone else? Yes. Eva.
So I met with Oak Grove. They also had a really lovely teacher appreciation. Mary hand wrote notes to every teacher, and I took all night. So I thought that was very sweet. One thing I did share with the board was the meeting notes. I don't know if you guys saw that, but that did come up in the meeting. There was like an onboarding. It was with all the leadership councils, and they met with Mo, and there were notes there, and questions about what is the leadership council, what's the direction the board could give them. There seemed to be some questions of wanting more direction from the board, and I mean there was a lot of other things in the notes, so it's something I think would be a longer conversation if we wanted to go over those notes that happened at the meeting.
Thank you very much. I think in relationship to that, first is the policy, which I believe is H7, and then as I look at the superintendent, it sort of falls into your purview in terms of the orientations and the recent summit that was held. But by all means, it also involves the board. We work together on this. So thank you. We should all take a look at those notes. Tim.
Yeah, BAM's Leadership Council met. And it's funny, I was gonna say pretty much what Eva just said. Richard Levy was, attended the orientation. And he said that, yeah, there's a lot of discussion about what's the purpose of Leadership Council. They read the policy, H7, and H7 lists quite a number of purposes, but they don't know which one to really follow. And then looking at, maybe I'm jumping ahead, but looking at the board report, that section for Leadership Council suggestions, it's hardly anybody ever uses that. So the point is that Leadership Councils have a long ways to go before they're cohesive and functional and really working the way they're intended to, I believe.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else having to do with board subcommittees? Kim?
Was at the Putney Leadership, and just FYI, their graduation is Monday, June 10th, so it's a day earlier than the other elementary schools, so, but they are, I know John had given a presentation on some of the Panorama results that he had, but I know that he's looking to engage in a more robust learning experience in the middle school because students are wanting to get some more options. So he's speaking to teachers and to students just to have options so that they are more choices for the middle schoolers. They're doing the playground, and it's going to be going out to bid, but they are going to be doing some fundraising for their playground as well.
Great. Good. So as we talk about board subcommittees, we also are talking about leadership councils. So anything from leadership councils that you would like to share? Sean?
I know that Guilford had a leadership council meeting. It conflicted with something for me, but I believe Brian was there. Pretty exciting to have it reignited.
Okay, great. Any other comment from leadership councils? As I looked over the monthly report that I sent out to everyone, I noticed that the Academy School had a notice that they wanted to share with the board. and I'm just gonna read it verbatim. Will gender-neutral bathrooms be presented at the board level as a district initiative? Maybe as part of the new gender-affirming policy. So, just to give an update from the policy committee, we are in the process of refining a gender freedom policy. It's gonna take a while. It's hard work on the part of those of us on this committee, as well as Adi Holding and Shannon Kelly. And they are working, they're the ones producing this, this brand new policy. So, and of course, we talk about gender-free bathrooms as part of that. Don't know what the final policy will look like, but it is definitely in the works. Anything else having to do with leadership councils? Okay, thank you. Moving on to dependent care options with potential action. There was a discussion about dependent care at the last meeting, and I think both Carrie Amadon and Christina Naylor did the legwork on this one. And they reached out to the select board to see what their dependent care stipend looks like. So every board member received a copy of this. Any comment on it?
I think I overlooked it, I don't.
Okay, so select board dependent care. It's to be used for children under the age of 13 or care of a spouse or relative. That's the first point. Parties may bill up to $15 an hour for dependent care for the duration of a meeting. Dependent care does not cover travel time. Only legal guardians are eligible to claim dependent care for their dependents. Caregivers must be 16 years of age or older, and stipends will not be given to legal guardians to watch their dependents. One stipend available per household, and a receipt is required. So, and attached to the handout is a form for a receipt. So, was everybody able to see this on the board? Can I just pass this down to Ruby so she can take a quick glance at it, please? Yes, Mark.
Is that what is actively being used by the select board right now?
That is what I'm being told,
Okay.
yes. Yes. So it might be something that we want to try. See how it works, see what the problems are, see what the benefits are. I shouldn't have started with problems. I
have a question, just to clarify, and I think this came out at the last meeting. So is their practice $15 per child or per hour regardless of child?
That's a great question, Ruby. Thank you very much for asking that.
I read it as per hour.
I did as well.
Yeah.
I read it as per hour per household.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Got it.
So let's go with that. Okay, let's assume that for our needs. Any other questions or concerns about this?
I would make a motion that the WSSD board take on the dependent care option as described.
Thank you.
As
described.
$15 an hour.
Okay, $15 an hour, as described. Second, Kim, thank you very much. Discussion. Tim, I saw your hand up.
No, I was gonna make the same motion.
You're gonna make the same motion, thank you. Any discussion? Matt?
As I noted previously in the last board meeting, I'll abstain from this vote as I view it as a conflict of interest for myself.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Are we ready to bring this to a vote? All those in favor of the motion that's before, sorry, Kim?
Do we want to just take a roll call because we already know we have an abstention? Just to save the.
Thank you very much. Forgot about that. Thank you, Matt. Okay, roll call vote on this one. Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to start in the middle, so it's not always in alphabetical order. Okay, let's start with Matt Shidlin.
Abstain.
Okay, and Colleen.
Yay.
Okay, Colleen is a yes. Brian.
Aye.
Aye. Kim.
Aye.
Eva.
Abstain.
You're abstaining. For your own reasons. Not because of a precedent. You don't have to abstain. That's your choice.
Well, I'm not gonna use it, because my husband is the babysitter.
Yes.
But I'm really appreciative that there is equity in case somebody does.
Okay. So then, this is a vote right now. And your vote is?
Abstain.
You are abstaining.
Yeah.
Okay. Sean?
Yes.
You are a yes. Ruby?
Aye.
Aye. Tim?
Yay.
Ann Beekman?
Aye.
Okay, and Deborah Stanford, aye. Okay, so the ayes have it. Thank you very much. Moving on. This is simply on the agenda as a placeholder, announcement only. Application for student representatives for the academic year 24-25. The deadline is May 22, and then interviews will begin for the one position. That announcement I know has gone out to the student body. Thank you very much. Public comment on non-agenda items. This is a time for us to listen and take notes. If needed or appropriate, the board and administration will work on next steps. So just a reminder to the public, there will be no response at this time. We are listening.
Point of order.
Point of order. Yes, Tim.
So it's listed as 7:15 to 7:25. So some members of the public may not zoom in until 7:15 to make their comments. We're extraordinarily early in the agenda. So I don't know if it's appropriate, but I would suggest that we come back at 7:15 to ask if there's members of the public who wish to weigh in.
Discussion? Are we in agreement with that?
I think that's.
We're in agreement with that, so be it. Okay.
I'll just point out, there's a timestamp on every item.
There's a timestamp on every item, but we are proceeding without doubt. And I'm not going to delay the meeting. The next item is, wow, we're moving ahead pretty quickly this time around.
I guess that was my point in considering that one item.
Yeah.
They're all
going to be askew. So as we go into the fiscal report, we are almost an hour early, but we are going to go to the fiscal report. Ruby.
Yeah, I guess we are already going there, but I would just make an argument that this particular agenda item is the only space that gives a platform for the public to speak without having something on the agenda. So having that be out of whack, I think is a bigger problem to me. So, but if we're already moving forward, it doesn't matter.
We are moving forward, and perhaps for the next agenda, I will place public comment on non-agenda items at 6 p.m. And that I see, and that way we will be we'll be right on time. That was perhaps a little facetious on my part.
Or Put duration, but not actual time.
Yeah, put duration but not actual time. Yeah, and certainly the lesson that I learned from Kelly is if you put the actual time, you're looking at that clock, and it's kind of cool, right? But duration makes more sense, I appreciate that. So, but even so, people will clock it, right? Yeah, okay. Jody, I see your hand up. We are, I hope you realize we are delaying public comment on non-agenda items until 7:15. So Jody, I see your hand.
I just had a quick question.
So identify yourself, please.
Jody Normando Darmiston.
Thank you.
You talked about in the beginning of the meeting, combining minutes and financial, and I forgot what the third one was.
And warrants.
And I'm assuming, I might have missed it, that if somebody wants, on the board, wants to talk about something, they can pull that out of the group.
Yes.
And talk about, what if somebody in the public wants to talk about something? Can they pull it out of the I can't remember what you call it, the big group.
Out of the consent agreement.
Consent agenda, yes.
No, the consent agenda. No, I believe this is a board-only issue. So I would, that's an interesting point, but I would suggest that if you have a question about a warrant, for example, that might go under fiscal report. For you to ask that question, or even to ask it during public comment on non-agenda items. But the consent agenda is board related.
What if there was something, and there isn't, I'm just asking, or what if there was something in the minutes that was not correct and nobody on the board corrected it? Is there a place for the public to correct it?
Matt?
If it would please the board, I would welcome opportunities to correctly reflect public comment and would welcome email communication for that opportunity.
Okay, so for the moment, let's leave the issues that you were raising that are really pertinent, that they would be raised under public comment on non-agenda items.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jody, thank you. Okay. So we are going to move on to the fiscal report.
Okay, I'll give you a quick recap of our finance committee discussion. Maybe if I could just pass this around. Just take one of those. The finance committee folks already have that, so you can pass by it if you wish. So we met earlier this evening, and what I'm handing out is the update. It's a legislative update. Just today, the General Assembly approved the Bill H-887, which is commonly referred to as the Education Funding Bill. So that's good news. And the other thing we're happy to see is the yield number, the all-important number that is necessary to calculate our school property tax rates. It's essentially identical to the number that we discussed at our annual meeting with the electorate. The property yield figure is $9,893. And we had proposed $9,899 as a tentative figure that was being discussed at that time. So what that means is the tax calculations and the estimates that we provided at March 19 annual budget meeting, as long as this yield bill is approved by the governor, and that is the next step. The assumptions that we shared with the electorate and that Mark and I worked through with the administrative team and then discussed with the board would need to be in effect. So the good news is that they didn't deviate on a negative side. Of course, we would have welcomed a higher yield, but this is kind of what we anticipated. So it's a little bit of a relief. But it is not certain. We do need to wait for the governor's approval. There are a couple other notes in this bill. They did just come out this afternoon, so I haven't gone through all of the details, but what I've shared with you is correspondence from the Agency of Education, Nicole Lee, and she's given us some summary notes. A couple of other notable points is the excess spending threshold is back into effect. They rescinded the suspension of that was formerly through fiscal year 29, and they're putting it back into effect. So next September, when we start up our new school year, the constraint that this is considered a cost containment initiative by the legislature, discouraging budgets being presented that are higher than 18% of the state average. This is something that certainly administration is very familiar with. We've worked with this over many years, but it was suspended during the COVID era, and it was initially suspended through fiscal year 29. But as we know, legislature really struggled with balancing the education fund sources with budgets that have been passed. So they are accelerating this kind of fiscal constraint that for next fiscal year. The other point I'll mention is at the very bottom of this document. They refer to also this ballot language that had been in effect for many years. It was rescinded as a way to help us get through the challenging times of the COVID era. That is now back on as well. And for those of you who may remember, it brings back language that is required to be presented for the budget vote that refers to percent changes in cost per student, but it also, of course, includes the amount to be expended and authorized by the electorate. So those are a couple of highlights. There is a very significant commitment to revisioning Vermont public education through a commission that has been formed, and a requirement for the commission to report to the legislature their findings. So I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about that. But those are some of the highlights.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. And also under fiscal report, I put down an update on warrants and whether they're being posted to our website and where they are.
The way we left it at the last discussion was Sean is comfortable forwarding the all warrants, and now that he's on both the SU and the SD, he's happy to forward those to all board members and to any citizens that request that. And so I think the consensus was that that's a fully accommodative response to the request. I did raise some concerns. It's certainly not like a permanent stopper, but I am concerned about the extent of the detailed information that are in the warrants being posted and archived on the website from a risk management point of view. As you all know, the phenomenal power of artificial intelligence to absorb information, and then we've heard a whole lot. I'm sure all of you have gotten different stories about how institutions have been defrauded of millions of dollars through essentially gobbling up information and then manipulating it in a way that has deceived folks that are in charge of avoiding fraud. So something we can look at more carefully. 10 years ago, I don't think I would have any concern about archiving the mass of check numbers, vendor names, all kinds of descriptors, on the website. Today, I hear schools, towns, and large corporations being defrauded, basically because the capacity of AI to scan and then assemble information in a way that is deceptive is a serious issue. A simple example that we have had to deal with is, every month we do a bank reconciliation, which means we look at all the checks that we cut, what cleared the bank, and then does it match our general ledger and all the vendors that we paid. We have had an incident, it's been several months ago now, where someone intercepted a check, took out the vendor name, put their own name in, and the bank actually processed the check. So that our vendor calls us and say, hey, we want our $4,000. How come you haven't paid us? And we said, well, we paid you, and here the check is cleared, but it was to a different vendor. And that's a simple example, but one that's very common. The more detailed information around, as you know, that's in the warrants, number, vendor, description, and a lot of other reference information is just sitting there. I'm concerned about that. So I like the offer that Sean has made. If we have 100 people asking, that's probably unrealistic. But at this point, we have relatively few folks asking for those warrants.
Okay, I'd like to open this up for discussion. Ruby?
I think that the kind of rationale that Frank makes is compelling for being protective of the information, but I also wonder if a simple fix might be to, on the budget section or central office finance section of the website, having a clear disclaimer that if any information, if it's not already there, if any information is required or desired by the public, what avenue there is to request it. And if that was somewhere, if someone navigates to a page on our website where they think the warrants would be, then it just needs to be one statement of how do I ask for them, because I think it behooves us to listen to Frank's warning, in part because he is he's holding all of that information, and I want to respect his authority. And I also think that we are at a volatile moment in history in terms of AI. I think that's a compelling reason.
So I just want to add a little glitch to this. As soon as you send it as an email to board members and to interested community members, it's now public information.
Oh, it absolutely.
And it is out there.
It's public information every
step of the way.
Yeah.
And I wonder if Ruby's compromise might address that as well. And if it's posted on the website, then all concerned community members have access to it instead of having to do it through a board member. Something to consider.
Yeah, the difference is, of course, the distribution of the email are to interested parties who've made a request.
Right.
So that's a smaller, much smaller audience than if we post it on the internet, where it just can be harvested 24/7 for months and months. It's a very different exposure.
The AI word is for folks who fish for information,
right,
to use it.
But there's no question, it's public information, it's always been available. and, you know, accessible both in hard copy at the office or, you know, through the email. So it's definitely readily available. It's just a matter of archiving.
Tim?
I'm sure you have, but have you investigated what other districts in the state and across the country are doing about this?
There's no standard at this point. It's absolutely an evolving issue. So I would say it's kind of early in the, you know, in the era of risk management in this area, but I would expect we'll hear more. The banking industry has been very assertive in recommending cybersecurity protocols. We're now with the Vermont School Board's Insurance Trust for property and liability insurance coverage, and they are also advocating for a lot of defense cybersecurity, essentially anti-fraud training for our employees, and we are absolutely complying with that. But it's evolving very fast right now. But the level of fraud is frightening. It really is. And the banks are they're losing a great deal of money through this fraud, and they're trying to catch up. There's a story just not too long ago about the CEO and the chief financial officer having been a facsimile of them through a Zoom meeting. You may have heard of this, it's been widely reported. A Zoom meeting or the equivalent, I don't know what medium, replicated and directing an employee to transfer $25 million to a particular account. The employee is like, this seems out of protocol, out of the norm, but it was so compelling that they're talking with the CEO and the chair of the corporation, and the employee ended up doing it, and it was a complete fraud. It's just incredible how sophisticated the AI fraud is, and what we've done in the business office is insist on personal recognition of voice and and facial recognition. We insist on personal relationships. We get calls all the time at the business office for information that is clearly fraudulent, and so we're very, very concerned.
Yeah, in that story, the employee was talking to the executives through Zoom.
Yeah.
So they had
live.
the physical identity and the voice feature.
The AI can replicate images and voice, so and that's far more sophisticated than just looking at data that's sitting in a file.
Thank you. Okay, Eva?
I wanted to thank Frank and Sean for emailing to community members the warrants and continuing to do so, and creating that olive branch, and more people can also request that as well. I think that you do bring up a really interesting development that's happening with AI. But there's a freedom of information, and it's public information, and people have a right to know who the vendors are.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something, I think it's a further discussion, but in the meantime, I really want to thank you both for, I can say Jody and Umberto, for emailing it to Jody, and then there is an avenue for other folks. And then it is, once it gets out there, it is public information.
Absolutely.
In their emails, so, thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
So something to be closely monitored. Jody, I see your hand up.
Yes, I had to break away to see somebody at the door for a few minutes. So I missed the whole part of it, but I gathered that things are okay right now. And I wanted to thank Frank and Sean. Sean has been sending me the information, and I can pick up when the when the board comes back online with BCTV, I can pick up on what I lost. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jody. Thank you. Anyone else on this issue? Okay. So now it is 6:56, and I think, so at this point, the agenda is being tweaked as we go through this meeting. So I need individuals to keep me on track, because no doubt I will lose my bearing here. The next thing on the agenda is under administrative report, and it is early kindergarten entry request. We are going to go into an executive session. It will be brief, with action after. So we're going into executive session under 1 V.S.A. 313A7, the academic records or suspension or discipline of students. Is there a motion to find that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or a person involved at a substantial disadvantage?
So moved.
Thank you very much.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion.
I would just like to make a comment that I appreciate that you indicated what the topic was about. We haven't done that nearly as much as we should have in the past. But indicating that it's early kindergarten entry request is what is exactly the kind of information for an executive session that should be.
Okay, I think, so I'll go back to that in 1 minute, but I think we're in the middle of a motion, are we? Yes, so any other discussion? I'm just keeping my head on track where I am. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand or saying aye.
Aye.
If you are opposed, please signify by raising your hand and saying no. Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. And before I go on to the motion to enter executive session, let me give credit where credit is due. Early kindergarten entry request is not my wording. I lifted it from the request for this particular executive session. So thank you very much, Bryn. Is there a motion to enter executive session under 1 V.S.A. 313A7 for the purpose of reviewing academic records?
So moved.
Thank you. I need a second. Thank you very much, Matt. Any discussion?
Are we inviting anybody?
Yes, we are. Yeah. Do I do it before the vote or after? Does it matter? Okay, we will be inviting in probably before the vote. Yeah, we will be inviting in Mark Spino, Bryn Tucker, and Carrie Beebe. Carrie Beebe, thank you very much. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please signify, raise your hand, say no. Any abstentions? Thank you very much. We are going into executive session. It is 7 p.m. All right, thank you very much. The board has risen from executive session at 7:20 this evening. Is there a motion?
I move we accept the recommendation of the administration.
Second.
Okay, any comment or discussion at this point? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please signify by raising your hand and saying no. Okay, any abstentions? All right, motion passes. Thank you very much. Thank you. It is now 7:20, so I'm making adjustments. I'm going to open this up to 10 minutes of public comment on non-agenda items. Again, public comment on non-agenda items. It is 7:20 in the evening. All right, one more time. Public comment on non-agenda items.
Hey Deb, I can't figure out how to raise my hand.
Oh, okay. I'm so glad you said something. Is that Bethany?
Yes, and I'm so sorry. It's not working on my phone to raise my hand.
I am so sorry. I appreciate your calling out at this point. Thank you. So I'm calling on you. Please identify yourself by name and by town.
Great, thanks. I'm so sorry. So Bethany Ranquist, parent of a BUHS student, and I am actually just very quickly want to put it still on your radar that the issue of emails getting through from outside senders is still happening. It's still an issue. They apparently go to some type of quarantine folder and frequently, and I don't know if it's just from outside agencies or if it's all Gmails, but it is very frequent that any emails that are being sent to staff and faculty and possibly you school board members are hitting some type of firewall or quarantine. And I just want to keep it on the radar that I've been told by several people who have also been told that it has been corrected, and it is not corrected. There are still a number of emails that are not making it through. So I just want to keep that on the radar that it can continue getting figured out, because it's been an ongoing issue as a parent who's tried to contact my kids' teachers, and as a community member who is working with a cooperating agency. It's really difficult for my organization to communicate with staff and faculty that we need to when their emails don't go through.
Okay, thank you, Bethany. I see heads nodding in the space.
Thank you.
So there's an awareness of this ongoing problem. Thank you, Bethany. If there is anyone else in the public who would like to comment on non-agenda items, please raise your hand or call out. Again, is there anyone out there who would like to speak? Okay, thank you very much. Before we move on to the Panorama report, which will take a bit of time, it is 7:25, and I would like to take a, what am I doing, 5 minutes?
Deborah, can I just quickly comment on something before you break?
Absolutely.
Just in terms of the Gmail, the blocks in the email, there's something that comes through for all of us each, I don't know, multiple times a day to release emails. So we have to actually look at that, and I think oftentimes people don't know to do that, so I actually just included that in a newsletter 2 weeks ago to staff, just as a reminder to make sure you're doing that. So as board members, I would encourage you to do the same thing.
Yeah, as you look at that firewall, it gives you the option of releasing that email. And I have to look at who the sender is to determine, I got something from Hannah Parker or from you earlier today, and it was in that firewall, as against, let's say, an article or a vendor out there who has tracked me down. So, yeah, thank you. Ruby.
Just briefly on that, I would just, I had an experience about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, where something was I was alerted to something that was in a firewall area, but I hadn't gotten that notice. Mm-hmm. And so I actually sympathize with what Bethany's raising. I don't have a solution. I think being aware of it and being vigilant, and I even tried logging into the system and looking at it, and it was nowhere to be found. I needed the tech guy to help me do something, and I don't even know what it was, just kind of resolved. Okay. But so thank you for raising it, and I think it's good to every now and again remind ourselves of this issue.
Right, thank you. All right, I am going to call for a 5-minute break, and then when we come back, we'll go into Panorama discussion. So we are going to come back at 7:32. Thank you very much. Okay, we are up to Panorama Climate Survey.
Shall I?
Go.
All right.
By all
I'm
means, take the
gonna
floor.
Share my screen.
Yes.
Let's see which screen is oops. That screen is that. Here we go. Okay. The board received sort of the PDFs of all of the surveys some time ago, and tonight is simply an opportunity to, since you've had a chance to look at that, I'll provide a fairly brief overview and then we can field some questions. I'll share my screen, and Peter, can I confirm that I'm also screen sharing on? Great, okay. So here's the overview. First of all, the survey was administered primarily in March. There's a little bit of carryover next April, a little bit. Response rates are provided here. And because there were some questions about response rates in the prior iteration, I've also included response rates for the last time we gave the student climate survey. And you can see that in general they are, most of them are up over prior year participation rates. Generally speaking, individual questions and the groupings, the three sort of groups of questions, in general, positive responses for most of the questions. Student-to-student interactions seems like where we are seeing the most, sort of least favorable responses in general. And specifically, our continuous improvement plan goal for this year of increasing the students at my school are kind to each other, the positive responses by 10%, was actually meant for grades 3 to 5. Didn't quite get there for grades 6 to 12. So that's the 30,000 foot view. And in general, I'm talking about the aggregate scores for the whole district for the 3rd through 5th grade survey and the 6th through 12th grade survey. There is some information on individual school performance. So generally speaking, the questions are aggregated into 3 groups: sense of belonging, school climate, and a set of custom questions that we put in order to track. Those are questions that we've had in student climate surveys for 15 to 20 years. So we've got some longitudinal data there, but in general, those questions, they're a little bit different because there aren't norm pools to compare those questions to. So you'll see in the results that I report, for a sense of belonging in school climate, I can give you where that particular grade span falls with respect to national norm pools, but I can't for the custom questions. However, the custom questions include things like kids at my school are kind to each other. So those are the questions we do want to keep in the survey over time. So you'll see for grades 3 to 5, the favorability ratings, and also recall on the 5, there are 5-point response scales from very positive, positive, neutral, slightly negative, negative. On that scale, only the first 2, only the top 2 categories are considered a positive response, and I'll show you what that looks like in a breakout for a couple of the questions. So 66% favorable response for sense of belonging for grades 3 to 5, 65% for the school climate set of questions, and 79% favorable for the custom questions. And then the increases, generally 6-point, 5-point increase over the last survey. And then the comparison for 3 to 5 with for the sense of belonging in school climate, that is in comparison to other elementary schools in the norm pool. We're at the 60th percentile for the sense of belonging and the 40th percentile for the school climate. Grades 6 to 12, the favorability ratings are lower, and the point increases, at least with respect to sense of belonging, are not as high. 2-point increase for sense of belonging. Again, a 6-point increase, which is comparable to the 3rd through 5th grade. And then in terms of percentile rank, it's sort of tough to, my choices for comparing for percentile rank are elementary, middle, or high school, not any combination of those. So I chose the middle school comparison pool for looking at the percentile ranking. In a 6 to 12 grade span, middle school felt like it was more or less in the middle. if we were to compare those scores to high school, we would fall in a slightly lower percentile if we were, or in a lower, I'll say not slightly, but in a lower percentile. If we were to compare to elementary, they would bump up in terms of the percentiles. So middle school seemed like the middle ground to compare to. And so you can see the percentile rankings there. Any questions so far? Or do you want me to present the whole thing and then do questions? Because there is a time for questions.
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
Is Vernon included in these?
It is. It is.
Yeah, and something weird happened with Vernon in 6th grade, I think, so it might skew the results.
Sure, and that may be, and as always, and I'll mention this later when we look at the school level results, for 6th grade, for the elementary schools, there are 6th grade classes that are small, under 20 students or under, that are included in the 6 to 12 survey. But when we break it out by school, then we're only seeing the responses of 20 students, and in a sense comparing that to a response of 100 students or 150 students. And so I always tend to take with those small sample sizes to just take them with a large grain of salt. They're gonna go up and down. A few kids feeling cranky or not on a given day can influence the results reasonably strongly. So I really want us to look at the aggregate scores where that's appropriate. In terms of the specific questions, on our continuous improvement plan, we've identified students are kind to each other. I mentioned that, and for the grades 3 to 5, that is up 10 points over last year's results. It's up 3 points for grades 6 to 12. And then another question that I like to keep an eye on, again, it's a custom question, just a statement, I feel safe at school. And for grades 3 to 5, that's a 77% favorable, and that was up 5 points. And for grades 6 to 12, 57% favorable and up 3 points. And at the very bottom, you can see there are sort of a breakout by response. And you can see that in as kids are kind, here's the 3rd through 5th grade, the answer options, if the statement is students are kind to each other, answer options are almost never, once in a while, sometimes, frequently, and almost always. And it's only the top 2, frequently and almost always, that are considered. If we were to include sometimes, kids in my school are kind to each other sometimes, that would add another 39% to the favorability ratings. I'm not suggesting that we do that, because I think it's cleaner to just pay attention to those top 2 categories, but certainly if we were to include that, we got to understand that there may be kids that think the kids are kind to each other and say sometimes rather than saying frequently or almost always. And so having a 32 plus 16, a 48% favorability rating doesn't mean that 52% of our kids think the kids are mean to each other, right? Does that make sense? So there are the breakouts for those, so 3rd through 5th, 6 to 12, for the students are kind question, 3rd through 5th, 6 to 12 for the I feel safe at school question. Yeah.
So the reliability of a single item is going to be pretty low compared to the whole category of questions, 5 or 6 questions.
Yeah, I mean,
because people are going to interpret kind in different ways. Which is why I've always thought it odd that we should be looking so closely at one item instead of just looking at student climate.
I think of that one question as a proxy for a whole lot of climate stuff, but we could equally look at student climate in the aggregate. That would also be a perfectly good indicator to use. For continuous improvement plans, the most important thing is to have a goal that moves you in the direction that you want to move in. And often you may choose something that's a proxy for a whole lot of things. I feel like if kids are reporting kids at school are kind to each other, that's at a high rate, that's a real good indicator that the school climate is where we want it to be. But as I said, we could choose that other one.
Yeah, on the other hand, you can look at, there's one school where that item got 23%. And I know the school, it's not that bad. climate.
Would that have been a sixth grade?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and that's that point about small sample size. I wouldn't pay a whole lot of attention to that 23% for the sixth grade. I'd look at in aggregate, 6 through 12. What are our kids saying about kindness to each other?
I would just look at all the questions combined as student climate, belonging, custom, but.
Also, perfectly reasonable question. So,
And I think just to raise that point, if I may, Paul, when we look at that in aggregate for grades 3 through 5, those three categories, we were up 5 points, 6 points, and 6 points for all of those all together. And similar for 6 through 12, we were up 4 points, 6 points, and 2 points. And I know as Chris Overdrew said, it's tricky to look at tiny numbers with these data. You're looking more at trends over time, but really positive that on the whole, we are having more favorability.
Yeah, and nationally, kids are getting used to being in school again after 2 years of COVID.
So another way to look at all of those data is to pick out those questions or responses that are showing, higher than average, if you will, scores, and those that are showing relatively low scores. So highs and lows for grades 3 to 5. The behavior of other students affects my learning, or a question similar to that, got one of the lowest responses at 36% favorable. Kids are kind, 48% favorable. I get respect from other students, 54% favorable. Those were the low scores for the 3rd through 5th grade. High scores, teachers are concerned if they thought I was upset, principal cares about me, and I have at least one trusted adult in the school. Similarly for grades 6 to 12, the questions are almost the same. There's one anomaly that I'm sort of interested in, but if you sort of, the other one, teacher would be concerned if I were upset, at least one trusted adult, support from adults. With the exception of that, I feel connection to adults at my school for the 6 through 12, with the exception of that one low, relative low, the picture that I get from these results is that it seems like by and large, teacher to student interactions are relatively positive. Student to student interactions seem to be where we are hitting some rough patches. So,
Which, just to call out that, correlates with what we've heard as a board from, student voices.
Yeah. Here are school level results for, each of the schools, pointing out wherever that 20 Vernon, so, okay, so was it, that was that individual question, that's right. So, for the elementary schools, Academy, Oak Green, Guilford, the K-6 elementaries, Guilford, Vernon, these grade 6 to 12 scores are for, as I say, small classes. Dummerston has a 6, 7, and 8, so that's a little bit larger sample size, so does Putney. I would tend to look at the 3 to 5 scores for the K6, K8 schools and the 6 to 12 scores for the BAMS VOHS. It's sort of seeming like the best indicators of where we're at. But you can see, going all over the place. Generally speaking, they're in the same range. I mean, if you squint your eyes, they're all up there. 6-12 a little bit lower, but generally in the same range. 3 to 5.
Can you move the little thing?
Yeah, these things make me, because this is Zoom stuff, it makes me crazy. Okay, so no 3 to 5 scores for BAMS or VUHS, but those are the scores there. Okay. So, next steps, we would absolutely administer again next year the same survey. I think we could look to increase response rates at VUHS. I think that's still getting the word out and getting folks to get those kids to sign on.
I will say we committed a time, one day, that every student in the building was supposed to be doing it. So, and it was during a 4th class.
Yeah, and it's just a big unwieldy bunch of folks to get to everybody doing the same thing. So it's tough. We definitely will want to cross-reference with our family climate survey, just completed that. And the teacher perception survey, that's the next one on the docket for getting out. And then incorporating our results into looking at root causes for some of the issues that we're running into, draft goals and action steps as part of continuous improvement plans. We're working on that now, and both at the SU and school levels. And that's it. I wanted to allow more time for questions. That's all I've got to say in terms of a presentation.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. So, comment, questions? Sean? I just called on him.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
We were looking at her, so we just did that.
Put Mel to pass.
You did. Sean, go ahead.
See if I can still remember what I was going to say. I was just wondering about how surveys are received by the student body, and whether there's any place on the survey for the student to say, do you see value in this survey? And I'm only saying that I think as at least some people that I knew rather well when they got to high school, they become a little rebellious. They become a little like, I'm not going to answer that, or I'm not going to answer it truthfully. So do you think that contributes at all to, in other words, some students test well. Some students probably don't survey well. So,
I think Hannah has something to say about that, and I do as well. Go
I
ahead.
think there's two factors. I think one of them is, yes, there are students who are just like click, 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 click. Like, I'm not interested in doing this. I think the other piece is just from like a school counselor, social worker perspective is developmentally, students in grades like 6 through 12, I would say 6 through 10, are really challenging each other in emotional ways that they've never been challenged before. And I had this conversation with actually my daughter's principal the other day because of some 6th grade interactions that are happening in this like class that had been defined as like the best class this 4th grade teacher had ever taught in their life in 30 years of teaching. And now they're experiencing some peer stuff because developmentally it's now appropriate and 8, and that's what they're moving into. And so they're struggling with how do we maneuver through this, and I think there's less of a feeling of safety and friendliness by the student's perspective because that's what they're developmentally experiencing. And so I would say that, you know, for 3 through 5 or, you know, up through 5th grade, life is great. Like when I was a school counselor in elementary school and I came here, I was like, what was I thinking? I went from unconditional love to like having to earn it, right? So I think there's a huge difference in terms of what you're looking at in survey results for elementary kids versus middle and high school.
Also, I would say I would be reluctant to put a question to the students on all of the surveys about do you find value in this? I think rather because there's such a developmental difference between a 3rd grade and the 4th grade. I think we rely heavily on whoever's proctoring those assessments, generally speaking, classroom teachers, or those surveys, to provide some context and provide some motivation for the students. Look, spend a little bit of time. This is important information to us. We really do want to understand how to improve the climate in the school. Thank you.
Thank you. Kim?
Yeah, and I appreciated getting all of this information well in advance so that we could look at it, so thank you very much. One of the ones, and you had presented it, but just in the school climate, the number 3, at your school, how much does the behavior of other students hurt or help your learning? Just concerned about that one. You know, you take out the middle, the 29% that they're like neither helps nor hurts. And you know, it is still positive 36, but just concerned about the 35% that either hurts a little bit or, you know, or it hurts a tremendous amount their learning, and how we're going to approach helping those students so that they can focus on school. Because I know there's a lot going on, and we have a lot of, you know, MLS, you know, for the students that do have behavioral problems, but just, and I'm not expecting an answer right now, but how we're going to help those 35% students, because that's a large number. You know, and that's taking out the neither helps nor hurts. That's a really high percentage of students that feels behavior of their fellow students is impacting their education. And what we can do to fix that.
Thank you. Matt?
I'm curious, Paul, as we look at this data year over year, COVID years notwithstanding, I'm curious if the administration has reflections about prior COVID years and perhaps ones, last year, perhaps the year before, and if there are trend lines, looking back over the years. Are we doing better in these categories, staying the same, or regressing?
My answer to that would be post-COVID, we have seen a decline in those scores until this survey. And it feels like this survey, I feel like I'm seeing some evidence, famous last words, of the curve turning. That's what
I think there was a pretty drastic drop, pre-COVID to post-COVID. And then this year we're starting to see increases across the board, which is nice. We want to see them.
How far away
continue.
Are we from pre-COVID numbers?
10% anyway? Maybe more?
If I could just add to that, talking to other principals, I was at a workshop today, talking to other principals, and the impacts are across the state similar. I was talking to a couple of pre-K to 2 and pre-K to 4 principals today, and they were just talking about the violent behavior by kids now that we never used to see, because during COVID, when they were like infants and young children, they weren't socialized the way that is typical. And so we could see this kind of challenge for, I think, for a while, because there's much greater need for the social emotional kind of socialization that kids need that I don't recall being there pre-COVID as much, but that's just what I see in here. So there's an academic drop, and I wasn't anticipating seeing it so much with the really young kids, but I think that's what we're seeing.
Rudy?
And just to kind of carry that, those ideas about trends and what we're seeing on the state or the national level, I'm just wondering if there, and maybe it was there and I missed it. It's possible. But if there's an opportunity for us to see where some of these scores, we have custom scores that won't translate in any way. But if there's a way for us to see where we are with comparable, or in the state or in other rural, or semi-rural environments, somehow seeing that might be helpful. I found it extremely helpful in this data to see how did we change from last year? What was that increase or decrease? And so I realized that I always go back to that question around trends and where are we? How are we situated? And I think that piece of information could potentially be helpful in terms of the goal setting, process within the district. But overall, that's just my own thought and comment that and also just adding my appreciation to this data being distributed in this way. Thank you.
The quick answer is that there's the comparison to the norm pool. So for sense of belonging, grade 3 to 5, comparing using the options to choose a non-urban elementary school, for sense of belonging, grades 3 to 5, we're in the 60th percentile nationally. For school climate, we're in the 40th percentile nationally. For 6 to 12, compared to middle schools, rural middle schools, we are 30th percentile nationally and 20th percentile nationally for school climate. So in that range, we're not at the 80th percentile where we'd like to be. We are at the 60th, 30th, 20th percentile.
I think that's really critically important information for us to kind of keep sight of. It's not the whole picture. I think knowing sometimes making steps in progress does involve looking in a small bubble of how do we get there, but taking that wider view I think is helpful.
I'll add one more thing. I queried the Panorama folks about the norm pool, and it does include pre-COVID responses and all of the responses that have happened over the course of, as new responses come in. Those get added to the norm pool. So the norm pool is actually changing over time as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I just need people to let me know if someone is in Zoom. I've lost my internet connection. Eva?
So looking at the data, there's a lot of promising trends, because it's not so much as the amount, it's 2 or 6, but looking at the trend of, is it going in the right direction? One thing that came for me is that students have a teacher that they can trust. That's gone up. That's really important, because the bullying, unfortunately, like, we've done this in social justice. We were like, what do we do? Like, how do we combat this? But that really stood out for me. My question is for you, Paul, is what are some of the things that were concerning? When you look at the data, when does it go into a level where you start to have discussions where you say, okay, something's going on here? Because if it's like a small pool, like say you're saying, okay, well, it's just this is something, a small pool number, it's not really coming up. But when do you start to analyze the data? When do you get to a point where you go, okay, this has gone way down, something has happened, let's have a conversation about why this went down? Or
Sure. With respect to an individual, let's say elementary school, the 6th grade results, 20 kids in a class, if we're seeing that persistent over multiple years, that's when we would get concerned about that individual piece. In general, for me, the concern is the student-to-student interactions. It just feels like it's the weight of the evidence is so strong that that's the area that we have to address. That other considerations, I feel like that's job one. Is addressing that student-to-student interaction.
And you did say that last year. You said that last year. You said that's the thing that we've got to work on. And I guess we're, as a board level, right? Because we have to evaluate how, looking at that number, right? So if it's, say, next year it goes up by 2% or 6%, how do you want that? What is a trajectory of a healthy school then?
I would, at a minimum, I'd like it to continue to increase at whatever level. Mm-hmm. I think as long as we're moving forward in the right direction, that's the key piece.
And I would say the student climate survey is not the final test to evaluate student engagement. I think there are many other factors that play into this around attendance, truancy, participation in after-school programs, academic data. So this is an element of looking at school climate, but we have to use that with other buckets as well to get a full understanding of student engagement.
Yeah, I totally agree with what was said, and I would just add to that too. I think one trend in general in terms of student-to-student interaction that came up with that we looked at through our CIP work last year, both as an admin team and with you all at the retreat, was looking at how can we distill that down. And while I agree with you completely, Tim, that like one question doesn't tell the story, choosing that question, kids in my school are kind to each other, felt like a question that encapsulated that idea in student language. How does it feel as a student here, peer to peer? And when I'm looking through these results, a lot of the questions, as you saw in your handouts, had 1% or 2% or 4% increase, and when we saw, especially the 3 to 5 range, that particular question increased by 10 points, that was a lot of the work of student leadership groups at schools, of second step lessons that were happening with counselors, with school-wide themes that were happening to really think about and celebrate and hone in on what is kindness in our building. And to see such a huge impact, I think it was one of the largest growth questions of any of the surveys we saw. And also to see a positive growth in the high school community was really inspiring. I think like we did some hooting when we saw that come in. Because it shows that we can really make a difference. We can choose something and we can narrow our focus and we can really support kids and teachers and we can make a huge difference. And we are celebrating that big time that we reached one of those very aggressive goals with one of our subsets of populations. So I think that's another way to answer. Like we were worried about this and so we really focused our improvement efforts on this and it was a whole district kind of effort and support. And we're having, at least with this measurement, saying, okay, it's getting noticeably better, and we still want to continue that work. But it shows the power of the teacher efficacy and student efficacy to really make changes in our building, I think.
I'm wondering if there's because you said, that it's one piece of the pie, it's not the whole piece, right? You have attendance, you have engagement. I'm wondering, is there a way to communicate that data? Like, we've had this many attendances, it went up by this percentage. Like something that we could like look at and see like that whole pie that you're describing. Even though it wouldn't necessarily, I think that just getting a snapshot of the year, of everything, of the surveys, things that you're seeing, and then writing a report where we could see everything. And we're not just so focused on one thing.
Okay. Tim, I know you've been waiting.
Yeah, okay, first getting to classroom engagement. I think we all want to know how engaged students are in the classroom. Panorama has a category that we don't use. We only use climate and belonging and then custom. But classroom engagement, wouldn't we want to know, question one, how excited are you going to this class? Or two, how often do you get so focused on class activities that you lose track of time? Or three, overall, how interested are you in this class? Or four, in this class, how eager are you to participate? Or five, when you are not in the class, how often do you talk about ideas from the class? These are good questions, I think, and I don't know. In the high school, I know students have reported that it takes them 5 minutes to complete the 16-item survey. Adding one more category like this, or another category that we all are very invested in, school safety, perceptions of student physical and psychological safety. They have 5 questions regarding student safety. Wouldn't we be interested in students spending a couple of more minutes to answer those 2 more categories of questions?
I think there's a sweet spot in the number of questions that you ask, and I think adding more and more questions, you're going to get less participation. Mm-hmm. I think the class questions that you just read are great questions, and I would direct those to like individual classes. That would be like a great end of the semester. Let's get some feedback for the teacher on how the children feel about that class.
But I've looked at several other districts in Vermont, and they all do a much fuller, comprehensive survey of students, including classroom engagement and safety. But the other item is February 13th, we had a discussion at a board meeting. When I thought it was agreed, I think Bren or Jackie Reynolds and others, actually I have the minutes, but we agreed that there would be a small group to discuss adding questions and discussing the survey. Is that group going to be formed? A group of board members with admin?
I don't remember that.
It's in the February 13th minutes.
So you are proposing a task force comprised of board members and admin
I'm not proposing it, it's been proposed.
You're reminding us of what was proposed. I'll change my wording. You are reminding us of what was proposed earlier, in effect, a task force of a few board members and administrators to consider expanding, to consider the range of questions that are asked.
And to consider the custom questions, which has been brought up several times.
Okay.
Questions that students.
Yeah, that's what I
And
mean, that's what I mean by the range of questions.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. On that point,
Yes.
Ruby, thank you.
My recollection of that conversation was really along the lines of, finding out from your team is there a point in kind of the feedback loop of the development of a survey and the consideration where there's a time that would be good to have that conversation. And so I guess I would suggest that at this point, we ask that question again and ask for, looking towards the future from this point forward, where is a good moment to have that conversation? Because I know there's a moment when you're putting this piece to bed and you're thinking about next year. And I think that's what we're talking about is the next cycle. So I think that's really the question. Is there a moment?
I would say the moment's definitely not now, between now and the end of the school year.
Yeah.
It's a pretty crazy time.
I'm sorry, wait one second, say it one more time, Mark.
I would say the moment is not now, between now and the end of the school year.
Okay.
It's just so much on everybody's plate.
Absolutely, but we are right at the cusp of the end of the school year, and with a deep breath, we'll be on the other side.
Right.
So we're looking at the third week in June and following to perhaps address this very issue and maybe meet in a small group to pursue this conversation. Okay, Tim, a follow-up?
Yeah, just one more point concerning response rates in the high school. 66% is not bad, it's better, especially when you consider that on the average there's 14 to 15% of students who are absent at the high school. So, which is why the protocol that Panorama suggests, and I urge everybody to read the Panorama protocol, suggests giving it over multiple days to catch those students that have, there's a lot of students who have been absent. Lastly, these are notes from a SAC meeting from a year ago.
So wait, can I just hold you for 1 second since you have that right in front of you? And so there's a lot that we're considering right now, and I see a couple of hands maybe to address what you're raising. So do you mind if I go to that and then come back to you?
Well, this just wraps up the.
Got it, okay, sorry, right.
No, it just says that students wore uniform and stating that students didn't take this survey seriously because their teachers didn't explain the purpose. So this just gets to protocol, getting teachers to understand the importance of the survey so they can tell their students, this is why you're doing this.
So I'm just gonna pop in here a second. I'm gonna say when you administer a survey like this, it's gonna be uneven. And it really is going to depend on how a teacher feels about losing class time. And that energy gets communicated to the recipients who are, the responders, and that's unfortunate. And I appreciate what you're saying, Tim. Bryn, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to propose in relation to the question of thinking about planning for next year. A lot of that is often driven by our continuous improvement process and through looking at data and talking about, okay, so what are the big questions that we want to answer next year and what data are going to help us arrive at that? And I know that that is going to be part of the agenda at the board admin retreat on June 18th. And I wonder if that might be a great jumping off point to identify what questions do we really want answered with the survey, and then do backwards planning to think about including potential action items in our CIP goal around our climate and social emotional learning area.
So I think planning for June 18th, it's a packed day already. And I'm hearing that some of the issues that are being raised right now can be presented. At the admin board retreat, I don't know that we can go into detail about the kinds of questions, where, when, how.
No.
I would think that needs to pop out of there into a smaller group.
Right, and a potential action item might be form a subcommittee to
Yeah.
look at survey
Right.
questions and identify which
Right.
kinds of questions.
That's where I'm going right
Yeah,
now. That's
absolutely.
exactly where I'm going.
And from those notes, Tim, I think that is what the quote was, suggesting it could become a CIP goal
Yeah, right.
You're
for
right.
February.
You wrapped it up.
Okay, Kim,
Do we have a date that all of the questions need to be in and ready for Panorama? Just looking at the calendar, so that way.
February 1, 2025.
Okay,
got it.
Just-
Wow.
just
Oh,
trying to
Very
get
nice.
the scope.
we've got some time. Okay, not too much, but some time. Hannah, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to say in regards to doing it over a period of days, we actually did our STAR data 2 different ways when we did the assessments this year. One of them is like we had scheduled time where everyone in the building was doing it at the same time. And then the other time we said, here's a week window and we need everyone to do it during this block sometime during this week. And we actually had a better turnout when we did it just in the one block time. So we had to do way more making up of assessments by spreading it out. And I think part of that is the teacher buy-in piece where we're not, if we're giving it more, if we're not giving it as much direction, I think there's more, teachers have more ability to not have the buy-in to say, we can't use class time to do this right now.
So, we've been, talking about this topic about 45 minutes now. And, I'm wondering whether we can, push it to closure. Eva, I will call on you and then I'm gonna try and move this along a little bit.
I have, so for a question for Paul, with the risk assessment, there seems to be some overlap with Panorama in regards to the data. And I believe that some of that information, it can't be, I'm not sure if it can be done in a public forum or not, because it is, some of it is, it's, there's a lot, there's a lot of stuff in there. So I'm wondering, is there a place to have a conversation, with you about the risk assessment? Have you had that, meeting with boards to go over that data and how that overlaps?
Just to clarify, you're talking about the youth risk behavior survey given at alternate years, most recently in the winter of 2023.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, easiest would be for me or someone in my stead to present on the most recent YRBS data. There's a high school report and a middle school report. And just report at possibly easiest would be just to report or even include it in a climate presentation.
Okay.
Okay, so it's been a reminder of something that was proposed a while ago. Maybe we want to have a task force to take a look at Panorama, the questions. So can I ask who on the board would be interested in serving on that? Okay, I've got Tim.
I am interested, but I'm also interested in having that conversation at the retreat level and seeing who steps forward after that.
Oh, I see. Well, I'm not looking to pull it out of the retreat level. What I am saying is the detail work. We're just not gonna get into the nuts and bolts. In a retreat that's gonna run from 9 to 3 in the afternoon, 9 to 4 in the afternoon. There's a lot packed in there.
Yeah.
So, I'm trying to pull this together and get something going as a result of this conversation.
Yeah.
So did I see your hand, Ruby?
Sure.
I'm not forcing you, am I?
No.
Okay, good, okay. And I see Eva's hand, is that correct?
Yeah, but what is the purpose of this task group?
To continue this conversation, the very one we're having right now, to talk about the custom questions, to pursue whether Panorama is administered over a period of time, or is it better in a one sitting moment? I mean, those are issues that belong to administration, but those are issues that affect perhaps the results of Panorama. The other issue is looking at the custom questions and maybe including them. Which ones are we going to include? So it's taking issues that have been raised in this meeting and extending them, and reaching and making some decisions about what perhaps Panorama will look like in February of 2025. Paul?
I would suggest we follow Brenn's advice and have the board admin retreat, see what the outcomes are from that retreat, and then use that information to think about next steps.
I'm not denying that. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying, we're sitting here talking about Panorama. We've got key questions coming up.
I think the board retreat will provide some clarity in terms of the direction we're headed.
Okay, Ruby?
It seems to me like we could, we've identified a few people that when the time is right, could step into that role, and the time could very well be sometime after the retreat when something presents itself. So I wonder if it makes sense to wrap up, although I do see Paul's fingers up.
I'm sorry, wait 1 second. It makes sense to wrap up.
To wrap up this conversation and move on in our agenda at this moment in time.
Meaning without establishing a task force.
Yeah.
Well, I think it doesn't hurt to have a couple people looking at the data and having some writing questions and having that conversation if they want to. I would be happy to do that with.
Non-quorum.
I'm sorry, Jim, what did you say?
We can meet as a non-quorum.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Paul?
I was thinking that an outcome after the retreat might just be an email to Mark and Bryn and me saying, hey, how about these questions? We'll have some discussion, we'll get back to you, maybe those, quite possibly those are the questions that get included in the survey and we roll forward. I don't think it has to be super complicated.
Not at all. I think a meeting is always great. To talk, a meeting as against emails. There is that back and forth, and I mean, I think that it worked very well the other day, right? So anyway, okay. So we are putting this at rest for now until after June 18, but we have a core of people who can begin to question this and pull together their ideas and communicate with each other. Okay, so I have Tim, Ruby, and Eva for now. Thank you. Is there anything else that board members would like to address having to do with Panorama? Jim?
Well, just one more. There's also the family survey and the teacher perception survey. When are we going to get those results?
The teacher perception survey has not been put out yet. The family climate survey was just closed last week. So at a future board meeting.
Okay. All right. We're going to move on. Thank you. So we are now moving on to the Perkins data presentation. And Nancy, this is 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
thank you.
I'm gonna try to be
I'm
really
sorry.
quick. I'm gonna
Okay.
ask you guys to pass this around and we will do it last,
Okay.
if you wouldn't mind. But then I can talk as it's passing around. So Paul, would you mind going to slide 7? It's one with 4 blue circles on it. Yeah. Oh, that one. Yeah. So every year for Perkins, every other year I have to do the full CLMA, which is Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment. The slideshow is relatively short. It's backed up by some data behind it that if you click on the highlighted titles, you will see the raw data or more of the raw data. By the time I collect all the data, I end up with 500 to 600 pages worth of information, and then I have to consolidate it into the answers of about 25 questions or statements. So anyway, I wanted to share with you this evening some of the highlights and some of the stuff that I think is really important about the Career Center itself. The first is the results of the faculty and staff survey, and I gave you the entire slideshow in the release of board information on Thursday night, I believe, or Thursday evening or Friday. But anyway, on page 7, you will see that there are 4 questions that were asked of the staff, and then on the next page there are even more. And what you will see is that the vast majority of faculty and staff are happy at the Career Center, and I think that's that takes a great deal of collaboration between the staff and myself. And it's not about always saying yes, because that doesn't get you what you ultimately need. And when we get to the end of this, you'll see what we got out of our happiness together. So Paul, can you just go to the next one? So this is the student data, and it comes in 2 parts because the survey is so long. We give it over a 2-day period. The smallest red sections are 1 student. The larger ones are 2 to 3 students, I believe, in those statements. So things like my program teacher treats me with respect, students in my program treat me with respect. Those are really important questions for me as a follow-up, and these are all questions that come directly from the AOE. So every tech student in the state of Vermont is asked to answer these questions every other year. We actually do a belonging survey as well, but that's not, that was just started today, so that's not quite done yet. But often our results are equally as high. So you'll see that there are a range of questions, and most of our students feel very much like they belong as part of the Career Center. And so the document that I just handed out, because I want to allow you a little time for questions, is it took 3 years of our reading and math proficiencies, our science proficiency. We don't have the 3rd year results yet because that's based on the 11th grade state testing. And of course, we don't have this year's graduation rate information yet. But you will see that we have grown since 2022, with our current results on this piece of paper being that 62.78% of our students have reached reading proficiency. Math proficiency this year is 61.69, and on the chart at the bottom, you'll see that in the fall we had 54% of our students who were proficient in math, and in this spring we have 62%. So that's a pretty steep climb. And then 45% for reading compared to 63 now. What I said to the staff today is they've done amazing work in the past year, especially when you consider that math and reading within our center is really focused on their program, their CTE program. It's not an individualized class for most of them. So they are really showing growth, and I think part of that comes from that sense of belonging and that sense of mutual respect for each other.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions? Jim?
I imagine your attendance rate is really high, huh?
Our attendance rate is high compared to high school attendance rates. Having said that, do we have attendance issues? Yes, we definitely do.
But in the board report for this month, for your attendance rate, you referred to the high school, you say it's
Right.
included in the high
So
school?
because we have a small population of students from other schools,
Oh,
if I report that, then
Yeah.
you can break out that data to aggregate to other schools. And so that data, I don't feel like I can share across, with any, like, I feel like I can only report the data for the high school that's involved. I can't report the individual, because some of my students, schools I only have 6 students from. So if I'm reporting based on 6 students, you could tell who's been absent.
and just one more question, the work keys proficiency rates, are those given to other career centers across the state?
Yes,
So
it's
how do we
required by
compare?
Perkins. So I get the state trend, the state averages, and they're part of that backup data that you have behind the scenes if you click on the
Oh, okay.
on the work keys data information. And it becomes public knowledge, but it's not yet because the CLNAs have not been, and the new Perkins information has not been released yet. I will tell you that we are currently we are above the halfway line, but we are still in the middle range of career and tech centers. But we're slowly increasing.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Eva?
I'm always a little impressed by the Career Center. I just feel so fortunate that we have that in our area. Some of the information as far as like the increases, like really impressive, right? Graduation rate, almost 97% graduation rate. That's amazing. The reading proficiency went up. But one of the things that's coming up for me is the science, right? Because the science seems to be where there's an opportunity for improvement. And I'm wondering what things that you felt you could do different, like maybe ideas you might have for next year that are different, ways that the school could support you to getting that.
So our science scores are the Vermont science scores for the high school. So they're given by every high school in the state of Vermont. They're given in 11th grade, they're given in grades 3 through 5.
5, 8, and 11.
5, 8, and 11, sorry. So we've had students, when those tests are given, if they're given in April, we've had those students since September. So our impact on science scores, well, I'm not saying we can't impact science scores, our impact on science scores is relatively small. Our window for impacting science scores is relatively small. Also, those gains, because we don't offer science classes, we offer a lot of classes that deal with science, but we don't offer like a chemistry class so what we're doing is building a set of skills that should help them in science, but are not necessarily broad enough to totally be evaluated within the science test itself. So it's continuing to be a work in progress. We try and pick it apart every year, but there aren't released questions. There aren't, it's a little hard to know from one year to the next what we're gonna see on what students are gonna see on the test. And I don't wanna be teaching to the test. I wanna be teaching to the professional needs within the community.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. I would like to move on to the administrative report. Mark.
Okay, so a continuation of the administrative report. There was a question around the monthly reports and including monthly data around suspensions. seclusions and restraints. Kind of reviewed this topic last Wednesday with some board members and my mentor. And through our conversation, it was really determined that monthly reports would really risk providing identifiable information that would put some students and families at risk. So we don't think that is a viable thing to be reporting monthly, but we could think about adding like an end of the year report, sharing that type of data.
So as you continue, are there any hires, resignations?
We have 5 new hires. I'll list them. Allison Taverna, BUHS Social Studies Academic Support Teacher. Katarina Mazer, Tech and Design at the high school. Zach Etzel, BUHS Academic Support Teacher. Ali Bissonette, Putney Central, Grade 2. And then Alex DeRoja, Green Street School, Grade 1.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of accepting these newly hired individuals, please indicate by, oh, did I open it up for discussion? I don't think I did. Discussion. Tim?
Yeah, just a reminder that we got Alex DeRosa's application file just last night. Just a reminder about policy C7. But the policy says that we should get these the Thursday before the Tuesday board meeting. So this has been violated a few times recently.
It depends on when the hiring process concludes. So I know one of these positions came to a conclusion on Monday.
Yeah.
So it's literally impossible to.
I understand that, so I think that should just be word saying that we didn't get this to you in time. You know, just to acknowledge that people are aware of the policy.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Can I just ask a clarifying question, going through our busy work and wanting to share that with you too? Are you saying, Tim, that if we hire someone on Monday, you'd prefer that we wait 2 more weeks until your next meeting, or you want us to get you the information when we can?
Can I clarify this a little bit? I think we're in hiring season, and I think that you're waiting for board approval to indicate to these individuals that they have been hired. I think it has to happen in real time, immediately, and I think it's just a timely reminder about this particular policy, and that if possible, we need data on the Thursday before. As I do not step away from my email in this capacity as board chair, and as soon as I see something, I'm struggling to get it out to the board as quickly as possible. So I maybe we could let it rest with that. Yes, wait 1 second. Ruby, you had your hand up?
All I was gonna say is that I think, I agree with all of this, and I also think that if there's ever a moment that a board member feels unequipped or feels like they're not able to vote adequately, then I think we always have that moment where we can postpone decision. But I agree, I think we having a little bit of understanding of the process is important. So I don't have an issue at all in this case. I was able to review it, but if a board member is not, asked to take moments in meeting or asked to postpone.
Well, postpone, perhaps meaning that the board member abstains, right, as against postponing the vote. Tim?
Just to respond to your question, no, I wouldn't be in favor of postponing it 2 weeks. Just acknowledging that, sorry, that we're bending the policy and we're presenting it at the last minute.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Quick example to the point. I had somebody accept a position yesterday, and I scrambled to get the stuff to mow. We got it this morning, but now I have to wait till May 28th, and so and actually that's it has a ripple effect
Yeah.
waiting, so.
Right. Are you okay waiting?
I kinda have to.
All right. Okay. Is this going to affect
Yeah.
anything going on for you?
Well, it impacts another principal,
Oh.
right? You know, so there's always a domino effect.
Okay, okay. I recognize this is hiring season, so I am very sympathetic to that. And if possible, you'll get that information to us as quickly as possible. Right, okay,
Well,
thank you.
We do have an executive session. Could we amend that and review the resume and approve?
We can wait. The other principal can do an anticipated advertisement.
All right, okay. Yes, agendas always can be amended, Eva, yeah.
I was just pointing it out there. I wasn't saying we should. I was just.
No, I'm doing a double take, sitting in this seat right now about all the possibilities and all the what ifs. If you're comfortable waiting, then we'll wait.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, thank you. Okay, great. So we are in the midst of discussion. Any other comments? All right, all those in favor of these 5 individuals coming into our school system or moving from school to school, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
If you are opposed, please signify by raising your hand and saying no. Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. Mark, do you have anything else on your admin report?
Not tonight.
Not tonight, okay. We are up to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. Second, all right, discussion. All those, discussion. Yes, Matt.
I'd just like to note that for the minutes of 4:30, I did make amendments that were brought to my attention.
Okay, this,
I don't think we can talk about them.
huh?
We didn't pull them out.
We didn't pull it out, and therefore, we cannot,
So this is the moment that they get pulled out.
they
No,
get pulled out
at the
before it
beginning of the
goes to
meeting.
the, it gets pulled out before it comes to this point. There's a motion, it's been seconded, and nothing can be pulled after the motion is made.
I think that in the matter of kind of making things possible to be workable.
Yes.
I think what happens is that in the moment when you're considering a consent agenda, before you vote on it, if something needs to be removed, it's removed.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
how it would operate in the course of a nonprofit board.
Okay. Kim?
I just, because I thought Christina mentioned at the very beginning of the meeting, when we ask if there's anything that needs to be removed or to be talked about, that's when things get pulled out.
So it also can happen at the beginning of when you're considering consent agenda. Most of the time, the consent agenda is actually dealt with at the start of the meeting.
Okay. Under the circumstances, this is the first time we are doing it this way. So that's okay. Don't, never do that, Matthew. Never. Thank you. I'm sorry, there was a nonverbal communication across the room. So since this is being recorded, let me just say there was an intense apology coming from across the room, and I just want to reject that apology. Hold on to it. Under the circumstances, there is an amendment to the minutes. Did everyone receive that? Did I send that round to everybody? I cannot remember. Do you want to indicate what, under discussion, do you want to indicate what the changes, please?
Yeah, there were 2 changes to the 4:30 minutes.
Yeah.
To reflect more accurately the speaker's intentions. One was on public comment, and the other was board member Tim's comment.
I'm gonna suggest that maybe we rescind this motion and we go through it separately today, okay? Just to make sure it's nice and clean. So if that's okay, what do I need to rescind the motion? Someone made the motion.
I did, I rescinded it.
You rescinded it, you rescind your second, thank you very much. Let's break this down, and we're looking at the minutes right now. 4/30, 2024, and May 3rd, 2024. Ruby.
I think that as a suggestion, what the question would be is, does anyone want to remove anything from the consent agenda?
Right.
And then your answer would have been, I want to remove that minutes because I have an edit. And then it's removed, and then the note keeper knows that when we still act on the consent agenda, but it doesn't include those minutes.
Okay, let's do it that way. We have rescinded everything. Is there anything in the consent agenda that anyone would like to remove? Oh, Matt.
I would like to remove the notes from 4:30.
From 4:30 specifically?
Correct, specifically.
Okay, we are putting the minutes of 4:30 to the side, and we are going to consider the consent agenda minus the minutes of 4:30, 2024. Good, got that straightened out. So
I move we accept the consent agenda as
stated. Yes.
Second.
Okay, we've got motion, we've got second, discussion. Or maybe there should never be a discussion with a consent agenda if we're doing it in this way. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please indicate by raising your hand and saying aye. Aye. Are there any who are opposed? Please indicate by raising your hand and saying no. Any abstentions? Okay, groovy. Consent agenda has been passed. Now we are going to the minutes of 4:30, 2024. Matt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I need to amend the minutes for 4:30, 2024 to accurately reflect two speakers' comments, one from the public comment on non-agenda items, and one to more accurately reflect board member Tim Mayseal's comments regarding the hiring process in that meeting.
Okay. Is it appropriate to be a little more specific right now? I think you need to be a little more specific about what we're going to motion and vote on.
Sure. The public comments, non-agenda items, the comment that I needed to change reads now as follows. Sherry Keefe, Brattleboro resident, expressed concerns regarding a failure to report by current principals and administrators in the past, and a failure of these individuals to acknowledge current emails when contacted. Additional concern was raised about a former teacher who is retired being allowed to participate in theater department activities after particularly egregious documented failure to report, and the failure of the principal, Hannah Parker, to respond to current emails about this or address concerns with the complainant. The second change was in regards to board member Tim Mayseal's comment on accepting the appointment of Alvin Coppola, assistant principal candidate at BUHS. Tim noted that the BUHS vice principal hiring process violated policy D1, personal recruitment, selection, appointment, and background checks, since no board members were invited to participate in the selection committee. He also noted that the board has received several hiring application documents just hours before the board meeting, another violation of policy C7.
Okay. Thank you.
May I ask
yes.
a point of information? So that is what's on the website.
Because during this meeting, as we had had a conversation, I updated and got it
All right.
up So that was, I just looked at him, I'm like, oh dear. Too efficient. So I apologize for that.
No, I appreciate efficiency.
All right, thank you, Matt. Is there a motion to amend the minutes of April 30th, 24, as indicated by our clerk, Matt? Sure. Thank you, Sean, thank you. Second, Kim, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand and saying aye.
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 If anyone is opposed, please indicate by raising your hand and saying no. Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. That was a good lesson. Thank you. All right, we are up to unfinished business. The Policy and Amendment Committee presents the following for a second reading. F26, participation of home study students in school programs and activities. And a reminder to everyone that the updated policy is attached to the agenda. The existing policy is on the website, okay? And the second issue from Policy Amendment presents the following for readoption. Action is required. B1, board member education. D1, personnel recruitment, selection, appointment, and background checks. And D2, professional development. Is there a motion?
I move that this board readopt policies B1, D1, and D2.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor of readopting these three policies, please indicate by raising your hand and saying aye.
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 If you are opposed, please indicate by raising your hand and saying no. Any abstentions? All right, thank you very much. Is there any further business? Therefore,
Madam Chair, there being no further business before this board, I move that we adjourn.
there is a motion. Is it seconded? Howard, that was a quick second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
If you are opposed, please indicate by raising your hand and saying no. Any abstentions? Thank you very much. We are adjourned. It is 8:50.